The rain came down in cold, fast sheets, and Talia Brooks ran through it with her whole life pressed against her chest. Her little girl was burning up. Nia's small body was limp in her arms, her cheek hot against Talia's neck, her breath coming in short, shallow pulls. The bus had broken down 4 blocks back, and the next one would not come for another 20 minutes, and 20 minutes was a thing Talia did not have. So she ran. She ran past the closed shops and the grey puddles and the people who hurried by under their umbrellas without looking, and she did not stop, because the only warm building she could think of, the only place with people who knew her name, was the hotel where she cleaned rooms every single day. The Grand Meridian rose up ahead of her, tall and bright, its glass doors glowing with cool white light. Talia's coral cardigan was soaked through and stuck to her arms. Her work shoes filled with water. Her bun had come loose, and strands of her hair clung to her face, but she kept her eyes on those doors and she kept moving. "Stay with me, baby," she said, over and over. "We are almost there. Stay with me." Nia did not answer. That was the part that scared her most. Nia always answered. Nia had a question for everything and a word for everyone, and now she was quiet, so quiet, and her little hands had stopped holding on. Talia reached the wide stone steps and her foot slipped on the wet edge. She felt herself going down, felt the awful drop in her stomach, and she twisted her body so that she would take the fall and Nia would not. She braced for the cold concrete. It never came. 2 strong arms caught her from the side, steady and sure, and pulled her upright before she hit the ground. She looked up through the rain into a face she had seen before but never truly met. A tall man in a royal blue suit, fair-skinned, with dark hair going a little gray at the sides and gray-blue eyes that went wide the second he saw the child. "I have you," he said. "I have you both." "What happened?" "My daughter," Talia gasped. "She has a fever. It came so fast. I could not get a car, the bus broke down, I just kept running." The man did not ask another question. He looked at Nia's flushed face, pressed the back of his hand to her forehead, and his jaw went tight. "My car is right here," he said. "We are going to the hospital now. Hold her. I have you." And in the bright cold light of the hotel doors, with the rain falling in clean silver lines and the whole grey city blurring around them, a man Talia Brooks barely knew lifted an umbrella over her child and led her toward the rest of her life. "Before we go any further, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly in your heart. If a soaked, frightened mother ran past you carrying a sick child, would you keep walking like all the others, or would you be the one who stopped? Most people scroll right past a family like this one. They almost gave up before anyone in this story ever noticed them. So if you still believe that kindness, hope, and love should lead in this world, take one quiet second to subscribe, and leave a comment telling me where you are watching from, because this family waited a long time for someone to simply look their way. Now let me take you back. Back 3 months, to a quieter morning, before the storm, before the truth, before the millionaire cried. Back to the day everything began with one small question from one little girl. 3 months earlier, the city was dry and ordinary, and Talia Brooks was doing what she did every day. She woke before the sun, made breakfast in a kitchen the size of a closet, braided Nia's hair into 2 soft puffs with bright red clips, and caught the early bus to the Grand Meridian Hotel. Talia was 32 years old. She had warm brown skin, high cheekbones, and large dark brown eyes that people said were kind even when she was tired, and she was tired most of the time now. Her hair was a thick crown of natural coils that she pulled into a neat bun for work. She was slim and quick on her feet, and she could clean a guest room faster than anyone on her floor, which mattered, because every minute saved was a minute closer to picking up her daughter. She had not always lived like this. 2 years ago she had a husband, a home with a real yard, and a future she could see clearly. His name was Andre, and he was a paramedic, the kind of man who ran toward trouble while everyone else ran away from it. He had broad shoulders and a laugh that filled a whole room, and he loved their little girl more than his own breath. Then one night André went out on a call and he did not come home. There had been a crash on the highway, a bad one, cars on fire and people trapped. André had pulled a man out of the flames and gone back for another, and the second car had gone up while he was inside it. The officers who came to her door said he died a hero. Talia did not want a hero. She wanted her husband. She wanted the man who sang off-key in the shower and burned the eggs every Sunday and called their daughter his little sunshine. After André died, the bills came like water through a cracked wall. The death benefit she was owed had been tied up for reasons no one would explain to her, and after a while she stopped fighting it because fighting took strength she needed for Nia. She sold the house. She moved into a small apartment on the east side. She took the job at the hotel and she kept her chin up, because Nia was watching, and Talia would not let her little girl grow up thinking the world was a cruel place. "Mama," Nia said that morning, swinging her legs at the breakfast table in her bright yellow dress. "Do you think today is the day?" "The day for what, baby?" "The day I find a daddy." Talia stopped wiping the counter. This was new. Nia had been saying things like this for a few weeks now, ever since a class at her school where the other children drew pictures of their families. Nia had drawn herself and her mama and an empty space where a daddy should be. "You have a daddy," Talia said softly, kneeling in front of her. "He just lives in heaven now. And he loves you so much." "I know," Nia said, very serious, with her gap-toothed seriousness. "But heaven is far. I want one I can hug at the breakfast table." "Is that bad?" "No," Talia whispered, pulling her into her arms so Nia would not see her eyes fill up. "That is not bad at all." She did not know it yet, but in 3 days, in the grand marble lobby of the Grand Meridian Hotel, her daughter would walk up to a stranger and ask him the boldest question of her small, brave life. And nothing would ever be the same. 3 days after that breakfast, the babysitter fell through. Esther Dawson, the kind elderly woman who lived 2 doors down and watched Nia after school, slipped on her own porch step and sprained her ankle. She was fine, she said, just clumsy, but she could not chase a 5-year-old for a few days. Talia had no one else. So that afternoon she did the thing she hated to do. She brought Nia to work. "You sit right here in the staff break room," Talia told her, settling her at a little table with crayons and a coloring book. "You do not move. You do not touch anything. I will check on you every chance I get. Lucia is going to keep an eye on you too. Promise me." "I promise," Nia said, already reaching for the green crayon. Lucia Vega, Talia's closest friend at the hotel, leaned in the doorway with a soft smile. Lucia was in her late 20s, quick and funny, with dark hair pinned up under her cap and a bright blue uniform pin she was proud of. "Go on, Talia. I have got her. She is the easiest guest in the building." For an hour it worked. But a 5-year-old and a coloring book have a short agreement, and when Lucia was called to help with a spill on the 3rd floor, Nia found herself alone in a quiet room with a door that was not quite closed. She was curious. She had always been curious. So she pushed the door open and wandered out into the most beautiful place she had ever seen. The Grand Meridian lobby was tall and full of light. Cool white sun poured through high windows. The floors were polished pale marble, and there were soft chairs and tall green plants and a fountain that whispered in the middle of it all. Nia stood in the middle of the brightness in her red dress and turned in a slow circle with her mouth open. And then she saw the man. He was sitting alone by the window in a chair too big for the morning, a tall man in a royal blue suit, with neat dark hair and a face that looked, to Nia, very kind and very sad at the same time. He was holding a cup of coffee he was not drinking and looking out at the street like he was waiting for something that was never going to come. Nia did not know that this man owned the entire hotel. She did not know his name was Henry Caldwell, or that he was one of the wealthiest men in the city, or that grown people lowered their voices when he walked by. She only knew that he looked like he needed a friend. So she walked right up to him, stood very straight, folded her small hands in front of her, and asked the question she had been practicing in her heart for weeks. "Excuse me, sir. Are you married?" Henry Caldwell turned his head slowly. He looked down at the little girl in the red dress, at her bright clips and her gap-toothed seriousness, and for a moment he could not find a single word. People did not walk up to Henry Caldwell. They scheduled meetings. They sent assistants. No one had asked him a plain, honest question in years. "No," he said at last, and his voice came out softer than he expected. "No, I am not married." "Why do you ask, young lady?" Nia nodded as if this was very important information. "Because I am looking for a daddy," she said. "My daddy went to heaven. He was a hero. But heaven is far, and I want a daddy I can hug at the breakfast table." "You look like you do not have anybody to hug at your breakfast table either." "So I thought maybe." Henry Caldwell felt something move in his chest that had not moved in a long time. He set down his coffee. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, so that he was closer to her height. "What is your name?" he asked. "Nia. Nia Brooks. I am 5. I will be 6 in the winter." "Nia Brooks," he repeated, as if learning it. "That is a very good name. And you are right, Nia. I do not have anybody at my breakfast table. I usually eat alone." "That is sad," Nia said honestly. "It is," he agreed. "I think it might be the saddest thing about me." They sat together in the bright lobby, the richest man in the city and the little girl who was looking for a father, and for a few minutes neither of them was alone. That was how Talia found them. She came around the corner with her heart already in her throat, scanning the lobby, and when she saw her daughter standing in front of a guest, talking to him, touching the arm of his expensive blue suit, every drop of color left her face. "Nia," she said, hurrying over. "Nia, baby, I am so sorry." "Sir, I am so sorry, she got away from me, she is not supposed to be out here, I will take her right back, please forgive me." She reached for her daughter's hand and braced herself for anger, for a complaint, for the kind of trouble that could cost a woman her job. But the man in the blue suit only stood, slowly, and shook his head. "There is nothing to forgive," Henry Caldwell said. "Your daughter is wonderful. We were just having an honest talk. I think it is the best conversation I have had all year." Talia looked up at him, confused, still afraid, and met his gray-blue eyes for the first time. There was no anger there. There was something gentler, something almost grateful. "She asked me a question," he went on, "that I have not been able to answer for myself in a very long time. You have a remarkable little girl, Mrs. Brooks." Talia did not correct him on the Mrs. She simply held her daughter's hand and said, quietly, "Thank you, sir. She is the best thing in my whole life." "I believe that," he said. And then, because he did not want the moment to end, he added, "May I buy you both lunch? The restaurant here is rather good, and I happen to know the owner." Talia hesitated. Her instinct was always to say no, to not be a burden, to not take what she had not earned. But she remembered, in that second, all the times she had been too proud and too tired, and she remembered Nia's hopeful face, and she made a choice she would never regret. "That is very kind of you," she said. "We would like that." "Thank you." And Henry Caldwell smiled, a real smile, the first one in longer than he could remember. To understand why a little girl's question shook Henry Caldwell so deeply, you have to understand the night that hollowed him out. It happened 4 years before that morning in the lobby. Henry was 34 then, already wealthy, already running the company his grandfather had built into a chain of fine hotels. He worked too much. He had no wife, no children, no time for either. He told himself he would slow down later. Later was always a year away. One winter night he was driving home alone on the highway after a long meeting, the road slick and dark, the traffic thin. He never saw the truck that lost control ahead of him. He only remembered the screech, the spin, the terrible crunch of metal, and then the world turning over and over until it stopped upside down. His car was crushed and pinned against the rail, and there was smoke, and then there was fire, and Henry Caldwell, who could buy almost anything, could not free his own legs. He remembered thinking, very clearly, that he was going to die alone, and that no one would truly miss him, and that this was the price of a life spent chasing the wrong things. And then a hand reached through the broken window. A man's voice, calm and strong, said, "I have got you. Look at me. You are not going anywhere but home tonight. Stay with me." The man worked fast in the smoke. He was a paramedic, off-duty, who had been driving by and stopped without a second thought. He cut the belt. He pulled Henry free just as the flames climbed higher. He dragged him across the wet asphalt to safety, set him down, and then, hearing cries from another car further up, he said the words Henry would never forget. "There is someone else. I have to go. You are safe now. You hold on." He ran back toward the wreck. Henry, half conscious, watched the man pull a second person clear. And then the fire reached the fuel, and there was a roar, and the brave man who had saved two strangers that night did not come back out. Henry survived. The other person survived too. The paramedic did not. When Henry woke up in the hospital days later, the first thing he asked was the name of the man who had saved him. But the night had been chaos, the records were a mess, several units had responded, and in the confusion no one could tell him for certain. He was given a name that turned out to be the wrong man, who was alive and well and confused to be thanked. The true rescuer's identity slipped through the cracks of a terrible night. Henry spent years trying to find him. He hired people. He searched fire and paramedic records across 3 counties. He wanted to look the family in the eye and tell them that their husband, their father, their son had not died for nothing, that the man he saved had been changed forever. But the trail went cold every time. After 4 years, Henry had almost given up. He had a debt he could never pay, owed to a man he could never name. That was the man Nia Brooks had walked up to. A man who looked sad because he was, who ate breakfast alone because he had no one, who had spent 4 years trying to thank a ghost. When Nia said her daddy went to heaven because he was a hero, something in Henry had ached, but he had not let himself think too hard about it. The world was full of heroes. He could not chase every one. He simply knew that he liked this child, and her mother, and that for 1 hour he had not felt hollow. So over the next few weeks, Henry did small, careful things. He found out, quietly, that Talia Brooks was one of his own housekeepers. He did not embarrass her with it. Instead he asked his head of staff to make sure her schedule lined up with her daughter's, so she never again had to choose between her job and her child. He arranged, anonymously, for a spot to open at a good after-school program near her apartment, fully covered, so Nia would have somewhere warm and safe to go. When Talia tried to find out who had paid for it, she was simply told it was a staff benefit. She cried in the break room that day, quietly, into a paper towel, out of pure relief. Henry told himself he was only being decent. He told himself it had nothing to do with the way the little girl had looked at him, or the way her mother had said thank you instead of no. But he found himself eating lunch in the lobby restaurant more often than he used to, at the same time Talia took her break, and he found himself asking after Nia, and he found himself smiling more. Lucia Vega noticed first. "Talia," she said one afternoon, nudging her. "That man. The owner. He looks at you like you are the only person in the room." "He is just being kind," Talia said. "He likes Nia." "He likes Nia," Lucia agreed. "And he likes Nia's mama. There is a difference." Talia shook her head and went back to folding towels. She was not ready for that. She still wore Andre's ring on a chain around her neck. But that night, on the bus home, she caught herself smiling at nothing, and she did not quite know why. Kindness has a way of opening doors that pride keeps shut. Over the next few weeks, Henry Caldwell became a steady, gentle presence in the lives of Talia and Nia Brooks. It was never grand. He did not show up with gifts wrapped in ribbon or make promises that sounded too big to be true. He simply showed up. He learned that Nia loved animals, so one Saturday he invited them to the city aquarium, where Nia pressed her whole face against the glass and named every fish she saw. He learned that Talia had once dreamed of going back to school for nursing, before everything fell apart, and he listened to that dream the way a person listens when they actually plan to remember it. He learned that they ate dinner early and laughed easily and missed Andre in 100 small ways: an empty chair, a song on the radio, a Sunday morning with no burned eggs. "He sounds like a good man," Henry said one evening, sitting on a bench outside the after-school program while Nia ran in circles on the grass in front of them. "He was the best man," Talia said simply. "He never met a person in trouble he could walk past. It is what I loved most about him. It is also what took him from us." Henry was quiet for a moment. "How did he die? If you do not mind my asking." "A crash on the highway. A bad one. He pulled a man out of a burning car and went back for someone else." Talia's voice was steady, the way a voice gets steady only after a person has said the same hard thing many times. "The second car caught fire while he was inside. He saved 2 strangers that night. He just did not save himself." Henry felt a cold prickle move down the back of his neck, the kind of feeling a person gets when two things almost touch and then slide apart. A crash. A burning car. A paramedic who went back. He told himself the city was big, that there were many crashes, many heroes. He pushed the feeling down. He was not ready to look at it, and he did not yet have any reason to. "I am so sorry," he said. "He sounds like the kind of man the world cannot afford to lose." "He was," Talia said. Then she looked at her daughter laughing in the bright afternoon light, and she added, softly, "But he left me her. So I am still the richest woman I know." Henry looked at her for a long moment. "I believe that too," he said. It was Esther Dawson, the neighbor, who first said out loud what everyone could see. Her ankle had healed, and she was back to watching Nia some afternoons, and one day when Talia came to pick her up, Esther took her by both hands. "That child talks about Mr. Henry like he hung the moon," Esther said. "And you, my dear, you have started smiling again. I have known you 2 years. I have not seen that smile since before Andre passed. Do not let pride or fear take this from you. Some blessings come dressed up like surprises. He is just a kind man, Esther. Kind men who keep coming back are not just kind," Esther said with a knowing look. "But I will let you figure that out in your own time." But not everything in those weeks was warm. There was a shadow that had hung over Talia for 2 years, and it had a name. The death benefit. When Andre died in the line of duty, his family was owed a substantial sum, a payment meant to take care of exactly this, a widow and a child left behind. Talia had filed everything correctly. She had the forms, the dates, the official letters. And for 2 years, the payment had been denied, delayed, and buried under reasons that never quite made sense. Every time she called, she was passed to someone new. Every time she wrote, she got a letter that asked for a document she had already sent. The man at the top of the claims office, a director named Gerald Mason, never returned a single call. She had nearly given up. Fighting it cost money she did not have for lawyers, and time she did not have between 2 jobs of being a mother and a maid. But the bills never stopped, and the unfairness of it sat in her chest like a stone. One evening, over coffee in the bright hotel cafe after her shift, with Nia coloring beside them, the story came out. Talia had not meant to tell him. It simply spilled, the way a held breath finally gives. "They owe us," she said, staring into her cup. "They owe Nia. Andre died saving people, doing his job, and his own little girl cannot get the help the law says she is owed because some man in an office decided we were too small to bother answering. I am not asking for charity. I am asking for what is already ours. And I cannot make them listen." Henry Caldwell sat very still. When he spoke, His voice was low and certain. "What is the name of the office? And the man at the top of it?" "Why?" "Because," Henry said, "I have spent 4 years feeling helpless about something I could not fix. This is something I can fix. Let me help you. I have lawyers who are very good at making people listen. You would not owe me a thing. Please. Let me do this." Talia opened her mouth to say no. It was on her tongue, the old reflex, the pride. But she looked at her daughter, and she heard Esther's voice, and she heard Andre's voice too, the man who never let pride stop a person from accepting help in their hour of need. "The office is Northbridge Mutual," she said. "The man is Gerald Mason. And, Henry. Thank you. I do not know how to thank you." "You just did," he said. "You let me help. That is all the thanks I need." Henry Caldwell did not waste a single day. The morning after Talia told him about the claim, he walked into the office of the one man he trusted above all others. Walter Stone had been the company's lead attorney for 20 years. He was a tall, white-haired man with a calm voice and a sharp mind, and he had pulled Henry out of more legal fires than Henry could count. When Henry said he needed a favor that had nothing to do with the company, Walter put down his pen and listened to the whole story. "A line-of-duty death benefit, denied for 2 years with no clear reason," Walter said when Henry finished. "Filed correctly. Documents in order. And a claims director who never answers." He frowned. "Henry, in my experience, when a valid claim sits unpaid that long and nobody will explain it, it is usually not laziness. It is usually because answering would reveal something someone does not want revealed." "Then let us reveal it," Henry said. "Properly. By the book. I want every step of this to stand up in any court in the country. No shortcuts. No pressure that is not lawful. I want this family to win because they are right, not because I am rich." Walter smiled. "That is exactly how we will do it." The first letter Walter Stone sent to Northbridge Mutual was polite and precise. It laid out the claim, the dates, the law, and a simple request for a full written explanation of the delay within 14 days. It also noted, gently, that Walter's firm intended to request a complete audit of the handling of the claim. The reply came in 12 days, and it was the first time in 2 years that anyone at Northbridge had moved quickly. But the reply did not explain anything. It restated the same vague reasons, the same talk of missing documents that were not missing, and it offered, almost as an afterthought, a small partial payment to make the matter go away. The offer was a fraction of what the family was owed, and it came with papers that would have required Talia to sign away her right to ever ask another question. Walter read it twice and shook his head. "They are nervous," he said. "You do not offer a quiet payoff over a claim that is simply delayed. You offer one when you are afraid of what an audit will find. We say no to the payoff, and we push for the audit." When Talia heard this, she got frightened. What if they fight back? What if I lose my job, or they make trouble for me? People with money always win against people like me. Henry took her hand. It was the first time he had done that, and they both felt it. "Not this time," he said. "This time you have people with money on your side, and the law on your side, and the truth on your side. You will not lose your job. You have my word. And you are not doing this alone anymore. Do you understand? You are not alone." Talia looked at their joined hands, and then at his face, and she felt the stone in her chest crack just a little. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Let us do it the right way. I want to stop here, just for a moment, because we are about to reach the hardest part of this family's fight, and I need to ask you something. How many good, honest people do you know who got crushed by a system simply because no one with power ever stood beside them? How many widows, how many children, were told to wait until they stopped asking? If you believe that should change, if you believe ordinary people deserve someone in their corner, then do this small thing for me. Subscribe to this channel, and comment one word below, the word hope, so I know you are still out there, still believing that the right thing can win. Because what happens next only happened because somebody finally stood up. Now let us keep going. The audit moved forward, slow and careful and completely lawful. Walter Stone filed every request through the proper channels. He requested the full claim file, the internal notes, the approval records, and the names of every person who had touched the case. Northbridge Mutual stalled at first, but Walter was patient and relentless, and the law was clear. Bit by bit, the documents began to come. And as the first pages arrived, a strange pattern appeared. Talia's was not the only claim that had been buried. There were others. Several line-of-duty and accidental death claims, all valid, all filed correctly, all denied or delayed for years, all under the same office, all under the same director. Gerald Mason. This is bigger than your family, Walter told Talia and Henry in his office, spreading the early findings across the table. I do not want to say too much before the full audit is done. But I will tell you this. What was done to you was not an accident. And we are going to find out exactly what it was, and we are going to make it right, for you and for everyone else this man left out in the cold. Talia sat in that office, in a bright emerald blouse Lucia had helped her pick out because she said a woman fighting for her child should feel strong, and she let herself believe, for the first time in 2 years, that the world might actually be fair after all. Andre would have liked you both, she said quietly. He would have liked that you did this the right way. He never cut a corner in his life. Henry looked at her, and again that cold, soft feeling brushed the back of his neck. Andre. A paramedic. The right way. He almost said something. He almost asked the question that had been circling him for weeks. But Nia came running in from the waiting area where Lucia had been watching her, and the moment passed, and the truth waited a little longer in the dark, patient as ever. The audit took weeks, and weeks have a way of changing people. Walter Stone brought in a forensic accountant, a careful woman named Dana Pope who could read a ledger the way other people read a face. She traced the money in and out of the claims Gerald Mason had handled, and what she found made even Walter sit back in his chair. Mason had not simply denied valid claims. He had approved fake ones. Over several years, he had created a small set of false beneficiaries, people who did not exist or who had no real claim, and routed payments to accounts he controlled. To hide the missing money and keep his department's numbers in balance, he had denied and delayed real claims, the claims of people he believed were too poor, too tired, or too alone to fight back. People like a widowed housekeeper raising a little girl by herself. He gambled that you would give up, Dana said to Talia, laying out the paper trail in clean rows. Most of the families did. You almost did. But you did not. And now we have him, not with a guess, not with a feeling, but with documents. With proof. This is the kind of thing that holds up in a courtroom and stands forever. What happens to him? Talia asked. That is up to the courts and the board and the regulators, Walter said. And that is exactly how it should be. We are not going to do anything to this man that the law does not allow. We do not need to. The truth is more than enough. While the audit ground forward in offices and ledgers, something quieter was growing in the spaces between. Henry and Talia were together more and more, and they had stopped pretending it was only about the case. He came to Nia's school play and clapped the loudest when she walked across the stage as a sunflower in a bright yellow costume. Talia cooked him a real dinner one Sunday in her small apartment, and he ate 2 plates and did the dishes afterward and told her it was the best meal he had eaten in his entire life, and he meant it. Nia had started calling him Mr. Henry with a softness that was getting awfully close to something else. One evening, walking Talia to her bus, Henry stopped under a bright street lamp and finally said the thing he had been carrying. I have not felt like a person in 4 years, he said. After my accident, I went numb. I had everything and I felt nothing. And then a little girl in a red dress asked me if I was married, and somehow that was the first real question anyone had asked me in years. You and Nia gave me back something I thought I had lost for good. I do not want to lose it again. I do not want to lose you. Talia's eyes filled. Her hand went, the way it always did when she was nervous, to the chain around her neck where Andre's ring hung. I loved my husband, she said. I will always love him. I do not know how to do this without feeling like I am leaving him behind. You are not leaving him behind, Henry said gently. From everything you have told me, Andre was a man who gave everything so that other people could keep living. I do not think a man like that would want you to stop living. I think he would want his girls to be happy, and safe, and loved. I am not asking you to forget him. I am asking you to let me help you carry the rest of the way. Talia looked at this man, this kind, lonely, generous man who had walked into her life by way of her daughter's question, and she made another choice that she would never regret. Okay, she whispered. But slow. We go slow. As slow as you need, he said. I am not going anywhere. It was that same week that the feeling Henry had been pushing down finally refused to stay buried. He was at his desk late one night, reading the audit file, when he came to a page that listed the families whose real claims Mason had denied. And there, in plain black ink, was a line that stopped his heart. Claimant, Talia Brooks. Deceased, Andre Brooks. Cause of death, line of duty. Paramedic. Killed in a multi-vehicle highway fire while removing 2 trapped victims from burning vehicles. Henry read it 3 times. He set the page down. He picked it up again. 2 trapped victims. Burning vehicles. Highway. 4 years ago. His hands began to shake. Henry did not sleep that night. He pulled every file. He found the date of Andre Brooks's death and laid it beside the date of his own accident, and they were the same date. The same highway. The same fire. The same 2 victims pulled from burning cars. Henry Caldwell had been one of those 2 victims. He was almost certain of it. But almost was not enough for a thing this large, this sacred. He needed to be sure. He needed to see Andre's face. He decided he would ask Talia, gently, if he could see a photograph. He would do it the next time he saw her, calmly, kindly, in the right moment. He would not frighten her. He would be careful with something this heavy. But life does not wait for the right moment. Life sends a storm. 3 days later, the sky opened up. It was the kind of cold spring rain that turns a city gray and makes the streets run like rivers. Talia had taken Nia to the hotel that afternoon because Esther had a doctor's appointment, and Nia had seemed a little warm at lunch but had insisted she was fine. By late afternoon she was not fine. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes were glassy, and when Talia pressed a hand to her forehead, the heat of it frightened her. We are going home, baby, Talia said. We are going to get you cool and call the nurse. But the fever climbed fast, faster than anything Talia had seen, and by the time they reached the lobby, Nia had gone limp and quiet in her arms. The bus, when it came, broke down 4 blocks out. Talia did the only thing her body knew how to do. She got off, and she ran back through the rain toward the only warm, bright place with people who knew her name. And that is how we arrive, at last, at the moment this whole story began. Talia running through the cold sheets of rain, her coral cardigan soaked, her little girl burning and silent against her chest. Her foot slipping on the wet stone steps of the Grand Meridian. The fall that never came, because 2 strong arms caught her, and a voice she had come to trust said, I have you. I have you both. Henry had been at the doors. Some part of him, he would say later, had simply known to be there. He caught them, lifted the umbrella, and got them into his car in seconds. He drove through the storm with both hands tight on the wheel and his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror where Talia held her daughter and whispered, Stay with me, baby. We are almost there. At the hospital, everything moved fast. The doctors took Nia back right away. A high fever in a small child is a serious thing, and they did not waste a moment. Talia wanted to go with her, and they let her for a while, and Henry sat alone in the bright waiting room with cool white light pouring through the tall windows and rain streaking the glass, and he prayed, in his clumsy out-of-practice way, for a little girl in a red dress. After a long hour, Talia came back out. The fever was breaking. It had been a fast, frightening infection, but they had caught it in time, and Nia was going to be fine. She would stay the night for fluids and watching, but she was going to be fine. Talia sat down heavily in the chair beside Henry and put her face in her hands, and finally, after holding it together for hours, she cried. Henry put his arm around her. "She is okay," he said. "You got her here. You ran through a storm and you got her here in time. You saved her." "I was so scared," Talia wept. "I have already lost so much. I cannot lose her too." "You did not lose her. She is safe. You are both safe." After a while the tears slowed, and Talia wiped her face and gave a watery laugh at herself, and she reached into her bag for a tissue. As she dug through it, her wallet fell open on her lap, and a small worn photograph slid halfway out. Henry glanced down at it the way a person glances at anything, without meaning to. And then he could not look away. It was a photograph of a man. A handsome man with warm brown skin and a wide, easy smile, broad-shouldered, standing proud in a Navy paramedic uniform with a bright reflective stripe across the chest. He had his arm around a younger Talia, and a baby Nia was laughing in his other arm. Henry Caldwell stopped breathing. He knew that face. He had seen it once, 4 years ago, through smoke and fire, lit by flames, calm and certain, a hand reaching through a broken window. He had heard that man's voice say, "I have got you. You are not going anywhere but home tonight. Stay with me." He had watched that man run back into the fire and never come out. The man in the photograph was Andre Brooks. And Andre Brooks was the man who had died saving Henry's life. "Talia," Henry said. His voice did not sound like his own. "Talia. May I see that picture? Please." She handed it to him, not understanding, watching his face change. "That is Andre," she said softly. "That is my husband. The day Nia was born." Henry held the photograph in 2 shaking hands and looked into the eyes of the man who had given everything so that Henry could sit in this room, 4 years later, beside this man's wife and child. And the tears came, and they did not stop. For a long moment Henry could not speak at all. He sat in the bright hospital waiting room with the photograph in his hands and tears running freely down his face, and Talia watched him with rising alarm, because she had never seen this calm, contained man come apart like this. "Henry," she said, putting a hand on his arm. "Henry, what is it? You are frightening me. Do you know him? Did you know Andre?" He nodded, because he could not yet make the words come. He pressed the back of his hand to his mouth and breathed, and then he turned to her, and what he said came out broken and quiet and absolutely sure. "4 years ago," he said, "I was in a crash on the highway. At night, in the winter. A truck lost control. My car flipped and was pinned against the rail, and it caught fire, and my legs were trapped, and I could not get out. I knew I was going to die. I had given my whole life to the wrong things, and I was going to burn alone, and no one was even going to miss me." Talia had gone very still. "And then a man reached through my window," Henry went on, the tears falling. "A paramedic. Off duty. He had been driving by and he stopped. He told me to look at him. He told me I was going home tonight. He cut me loose and he pulled me out and he dragged me to safety just before the fire took the whole car. And then he heard someone else crying out further up the road, and he said, 'There is someone else, I have to go, you hold on.' And he ran back into the fire and he pulled out a second person. And then the fuel caught, and there was a roar, and he never came back out." Talia's hand had risen to her mouth. She was shaking now too. "I survived because of him," Henry said. "The other person survived because of him. I have spent 4 years trying to find his family. I hired people. I searched every record I could find. I wanted to look his family in the eyes and tell them that he did not die for nothing, that the man he saved became a better man because of it. But the night was chaos, the records were wrong, and I never found him. I had given up. I told myself I would carry that debt to my grave, owed to a man I could never name. He held up the photograph with both trembling hands. This is him, Talia. This is the man. Andre Brooks saved my life. Your husband. Nia's father. The hero who went to heaven that your little girl misses at the breakfast table. He is the reason I am alive. He is the reason I am sitting in this room right now, beside you, beside your daughter. His voice cracked completely. Nia walked up to me 3 months ago and asked if I was married, and I had no idea, that I was looking at the daughter of the man I owe everything to. That is the reason. That is the reason I am crying. I found his family at last. I found you. He sent you to me, and I did not even know. Talia's tears came in a flood. She looked at the photograph, at the man she had loved and buried, and then at the man beside her, the lonely man her daughter had chosen out of an entire lobby of strangers, and the whole impossible shape of it became clear to her all at once. Out of every person in that hotel, on that day, Nia had walked straight to the one man her father had saved with his last breath. He pulled you out, she whispered. All this time. Every kindness you have done for us. It was never charity. It was him. It was always him, reaching back through you, taking care of us the way he always promised he would. I will spend the rest of my life taking care of you both, Henry said, holding her hands. Not because I owe a debt. I stopped doing this out of debt a long time ago. I am doing it because I love you, and I love that little girl in there, and because the bravest man who ever lived gave his life so that one day I could be standing in exactly this spot to do exactly this. I am not letting go of either of you. Not ever. From the doorway, a small sleepy voice said, Mama. Why is Mr. Henry crying? They turned. A nurse was bringing Nia out in a wheelchair, wrapped in a blanket, pale but bright-eyed, her fever gone, holding in her small hands the one thing she always carried, her father's paramedic service medal, the one Talia had given her to keep him close. Henry got down on his knees in front of the little girl who had started it all. Nia, he said, wiping his eyes and smiling through them. Do you remember when you asked me if I was married, and if I could be your daddy? Nia nodded, suddenly shy. I knew your daddy, Henry said softly. I never knew his name until tonight, but I knew him. He was the bravest, kindest man I have ever met, and a long time ago he saved my life. He is the reason I am here. So if it is all right with you, and all right with your mama, I would be the proudest man in the whole world to take care of you both, for the rest of my life. Not to replace your daddy. Nobody could ever do that. But to keep the promise he made to you, the best that I can. Nia looked at her mother. Talia, crying and laughing at once, nodded. So the little girl reached out and put her father's medal into Henry's hand, and then she wrapped her small arms around his neck, and in the bright clean light of that hospital hallway, the millionaire who had wept for a stranger 4 years ago wept again, this time out of pure joy. The truth about Andre changed everything between Talia and Henry, but it did not change the work that still had to be done. If anything, it made Henry more determined to finish it the right way. The man who had saved his life had been cheated of the one thing meant to protect his family. Henry would see that wrong made right, not with money quietly handed over, but with justice done in the open, on the record, where it could never be undone. Walter Stone and Dana Pope completed the forensic audit a few weeks later. What they had found was no longer a suspicion. It was a clean, documented, undeniable record of fraud. Gerald Mason had stolen from the company through false claims and had buried the real claims of grieving families to hide the gap. He had chosen his victims carefully, picking the people he believed were too overwhelmed to fight. He had not counted on one of those widows finding a friend with the means and the will to stand beside her. and he had not counted on that friend insisting on doing everything by the book. The case moved through the proper channels, exactly as Henry had demanded. Walter presented the full audit to the board of directors of Northbridge Mutual. The findings were so clear that the board called an emergency vote. By a unanimous show of hands, Gerald Mason was removed from his position and stripped of every authority he had held. The board then did the thing that mattered most. They voted to refer the entire matter to the proper authorities and to cooperate fully with any investigation, because the company itself had been robbed and lied to, and the company wanted the truth out as badly as the families did. The regulators reviewed the documents. The prosecutors reviewed them too. Because Dana Pope's work was so careful and so complete, there was nothing to argue about. Gerald Mason was charged through the courts for what he had done. He would have his fair trial, as every person deserves, but the paper trail was the kind that does not bend, and everyone in that courtroom knew which way it would go. He had taken from widows and orphans, and now, lawfully and in the full light of day, he would answer for it. Talia sat in the gallery on the first day of the proceedings, in a bright royal blue dress, with Henry on one side and Esther Dawson on the other, and Lucia Vega just behind. She watched the man who had ignored her for 2 years, who had decided she was too small to matter, sit at a table while his own records were read aloud. She did not feel hatred. She was surprised to find she did not feel much of anything for him at all. She felt, instead, a deep, steady peace, the peace of a person who has been believed at last. "This is for André," she whispered. "And for every family he kept in the dark." The board of Northbridge Mutual, eager to set things right, did not wait for the criminal case to finish. They paid every buried claim in full, with all the years of interest owed, to every family Mason had wronged. For Talia and Nia, that meant the entire death benefit André had earned, every dollar of it, plus the back amount that should have been theirs from the start. It was enough to erase every debt Talia had, enough to put away a real future for Nia, enough that a tired woman who had been running on empty for 2 years could finally exhale. When the check was handed to her, the old reflex rose one more time, the urge to say it was too much, that she could not accept it. But Henry, who knew her by now, simply put his hand over hers. "This is not a gift," he said gently. "This is not charity, and it is not mine. This is what André earned. This is what he left for his girls. Take it the way he would want you to take it, with your head high. He provided for you. Let him." So Talia took it, with gratitude, the way André would have wanted, and she held her daughter close, and she thanked the people who had stood with her, every single one. There was more. Henry, who had spent 4 years searching for a way to repay a debt he thought he could never pay, finally found his way. With Talia at his side, he started a foundation in André Brooks's name. The André Brooks Fund would do one simple thing, and do it well. It would support the families of first responders who died in the line of duty, the widows and the children left behind, so that no other family would ever have to beg for 2 years for the help they were owed. It would pay for things quickly, kindly, and without making anyone feel small. Walter Stone agreed to run the legal side for free. Dana Pope volunteered to keep its books honest. Lucia Vega, who had a gift for organizing and a heart for people, left housekeeping to become the foundation's first coordinator, a real job with a real future, the kind she had always deserved. Esther Dawson became its unofficial grandmother, baking for every event and hugging every family that walked through the door. At the foundation's first gathering, in a bright hall full of cool clean light and fresh flowers, Henry stood up to speak, and he kept it short, because he was not a man of big speeches. "For years ago," he said, "a stranger gave his life to save mine. I never knew his name. I thought I would never get to thank him. I was wrong. His name was André Brooks. He was a husband, and a father, and the bravest man I have ever known. I cannot thank him in person. So I am going to spend the rest of my life thanking him by taking care of the people he loved, and the people who are out there right now doing what he did. That is the only way I know to pay a debt like this. By passing the kindness on." The room rose to its feet. And in the front row, a little girl in a bright red dress held her father's medal and clapped the hardest of all. The seasons turned, as they do, and a year passed, and it was a good year, the best the Brooks family had known in a long time. Talia went back to school, the dream she had set down when her world fell apart. She studied nursing in the evenings, and she was at the top of her class, because a woman who has cared for a sick child through a storm already knows the most important parts of the job. Henry kept Nia on those nights, the two of them building forts out of couch cushions and eating cereal for dinner when they thought no one would find out, and Talia always found out, and she never minded. Nia turned 6 in the winter, just as she had promised that long-ago morning. She had a real birthday party, with a yard and balloons and friends, and at the breakfast table on the morning of her birthday, she had exactly what she had asked for. A mother who loved her, who had her hair braided and ready, and a man who loved her too, sitting in the chair that had been empty for so long, burning the eggs just slightly, the way she had always heard her father used to. "You burned them, Mr. Henry," Nia said, delighted. "I did," Henry admitted. "Your daddy used to burn them too, I am told. I think it runs in this family now." He had asked Talia to marry him on a clear bright afternoon in the park, with Nia in on the secret, holding the ring in her small hands and grinning so hard she could barely keep still. Talia had cried and said yes, and she had taken Andre's ring off the chain around her neck, not to throw it away, never that, but to keep it safe in a little box that Nia would have one day, so that her daughter would always carry her first father with her, even as a second one came to stay. The wedding was small and full of bright color. Talia wore emerald green, her favorite. Nia wore red and carried flowers. Lucia stood beside Talia, and Esther cried into a handkerchief through the whole thing, and Walter Stone gave a toast that was far too long and exactly right. It was, everyone agreed, the happiest day any of them could remember. And so the lonely man who once ate breakfast by himself, the millionaire who carried a debt he thought he could never pay, found himself at the head of a loud, warm, bright family table, surrounded by the people his rescuer had loved. He had searched for years for a way to say thank you, and in the end the thank you had walked right up to him in a hotel lobby, folded its small hands, and asked if he was married. On the evening after the wedding, when the guests had gone home and the house was quiet, Talia was packing away the last of the day when she found a small box she did not recognize at the bottom of an old trunk of Andre's things, a trunk she had not been able to open for years. Inside was an envelope, sealed, soft with age, with Andre's handwriting on the front. It said, "To be opened by my family, only when you have found your way to happy again." Talia's hands trembled. She had never seen it. She did not know when he had written it. She called Henry over, and Nia climbed up between them on the couch, and together, in the bright lamplight, Talia opened her husband's letter and read it aloud. "My girls," it said. "If you are reading this, then enough time has passed that you have found your smile again, and that is the only thing I ever wanted. I do not know what tomorrow holds for me. In my line of work a person learns to make peace with that. But I know this. Love does not end when a life does. It just changes hands. So if someone good has come into your lives, someone kind, someone who makes you laugh at the breakfast table, do not be afraid of him. Do not feel you are leaving me behind. I will have sent him to you. I will have had a hand in it somehow, I am sure of it, because I will always, always be looking out for my girls. Be happy. Be brave. Keep being kind to strangers. You never know whose whole life you might save. All my love, always, your Andre." For a long moment no one spoke. Then Nia looked up at her mother and at Henry with her father's medal in her lap and the whole wisdom of a 6-year-old in her eyes. "He did send you," she said simply. "Daddy sent you, Mr. Henry. Just like he said." And Henry Caldwell, the man who had cried in a hotel and cried in a hospital, looked down at the letter, and at the little girl who had chosen him out of a crowd, and at the woman who had run through a storm and into a new life, and he understood that he had spent 4 years thinking he was the one who needed to say thank you, when all along he had been the gift. Outside, the night was clear and bright with stars over the quiet city. Somewhere out there, a highway ran under those same stars, the place where a brave man had once reached through fire to pull a stranger home. And here, in a warm house full of light, that stranger sat with that brave man's family, kept safe and kept loved, exactly as had been promised. Talia folded the letter and held it to her chest. She looked at her husband's words, then at her daughter, then at the kind man beside her, and a question rose in her mind, soft and wondering, the kind of question that has no end because the answer is still being written. How many other lives, she thought, had André touched on his way through this world? How many other strangers were out there right now, carrying a kindness they could not explain, waiting, like Henry had waited, for the day it would all come full circle? And what would happen, she wondered, when the next one finally came knocking on their door? She did not know. None of them knew. But for the first time in a very long time, Talia Brooks was not afraid of what came next. Because she had learned the one thing her husband had been trying to teach her all along. Kindness travels further than any of us can see. Hope outlives the dark. And love, real love, the kind that reaches back through fire, never truly lets go. She turned off the lamp. She kissed her sleeping daughter's head. And the bright new family settled in together for the night, safe, and whole, and only just beginning.